All right, before we get started, let me do my unofficial roll call to make sure all of the people are here that need to be here. I saw Miriam and I definitely saw Katie. I want to see if Cindy is here. Did I see Cindy? Yep, I see Cindy. Um, and I see, is Aaron here? Aaron, is Aaron in the house? I don't see Aaron yet. So we may have to ping Aaron to make sure she shows. And I think that's everybody. Is there anybody else we were expecting, Miriam?
This is Ann, and I'm here too.
Oh, hey, Ann, thank you. Okay, doesn't look like it. All right, so we like to make sure we're respectful of your time, so we'll go ahead and get started since everybody is here. Thank you so much for joining us today in our third town hall. This is insane. I feel like we've been doing this for a hot second, and we're in our third one now. We're focused on housing today. We're going to go through a few slides, some housekeeping. At the bottom right-hand corner, probably of yours, you will see three kind of dots. If you click on that, it should say Q&A. We're asking that you actually submit your questions through the Q&A feature, and you use chat for any discourse that we kind of need to have. We really prefer you put it in the Q&A. I'm going to say that as many times as I possibly can. If you drop it in the chat, we will pull it from the chat. We will do that. But we really, really hope this is great for us in tracking the questions as well. So if you can place it there, we are recording the session today. So also want to thank Rebecca on the back end. If Kristen's here, Dahlia's here, if anybody else from the DMAS team is here to support, thank you in advance for all that you're doing today. I think we can go ahead and start recording. If it's not already, is it already? Oh, recording is in process. See, Rebecca's already on it. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you again for being here. You know where you can drop your questions. If you have any other issues or concerns, please. Oh, also make sure you keep yourself muted. We know there's lots going on during lunch, but we don't need to know about it. So if you could keep yourself muted, we would appreciate that. Next slide. And I think we're going to go ahead and start with Miriam. She's going to kick us off and jump right into it. Thanks for joining again.
Good afternoon, folks. Thank you all for joining. I think we're good to go. Okay, my name is Miriam Siddiqui. I'm Senior Operations Advisor in the Director's Office at DMAS. I will provide a quick overview. Katie will provide update from the DSS side, and then Natalie will provide all the outreach efforts we're doing, and we're happy to take questions afterwards. And I believe we have received additional questions in advance as well, so we can talk through those as needed. Okay, here we go. And I would like to just kind of clarify some of the words I'm going to use. They are interchangeably used. Unwinding. DMAS is starting their unwinding processes starting in March 2023. Basically, unwinding is a process that's involved restarting of your renewals for Medicaid members. Since as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, federal government had provided additional funding to us to ensure that we can keep our members on Medicaid program. Therefore, in last 2.5, 3 years, we haven't renewed our members. So starting in March, we will begin that process. It's a batch process. So it will take 12 months to complete, and we will reach out to individuals as needed throughout the 12-month period. Why we're here, we really we want to share this information with our partners, our stakeholders, to really just for them to understand what the upcoming renewal process looks like and how you can support us. Next slide, please. One more. Okay. Since we knew this was because of the COVID-19, these measures were being put in, we have been planning for the last 2.5, 3 years now to know that anticipating that the renewals will come back. So DMAS and DSS have been working in the background to make our processes, improve our processes in general in different ways to make this renewal process for overall population of Medicaid members as easy as possible. Just to highlight a couple here, we've made several system changes and increased automation to improve the efficiencies. And so that way more individuals go through automated renewal process versus having to fill out a complete paper packet, to do the renewals. Another one I want to highlight here is our collaboration with our managed care organizations. They have been a great partner to provide information and educate our members about what's going to happen with the renewals, and they will continue to do that as we go into the renewal process starting in March. Next slide, please. Okay, just to provide a quick overview of what the process will look like. CMS obviously we have been working with them very closely to provide, for them to provide us guidance and clarity on what the unwinding would look like or renewal process would look like. The states must start with the automated process where they, every month, a specific number of folks will go through automated renewals. If we have all the information in the system for them, we will complete their renewals and they will get a notice of action. They will get a notice of action in the mail that they have renewed and they have extended their renewal for another 12 months. If we need additional information, the state will send a pre-populated renewal form to the member to the address that we have in our system. And then the member will have 30 days to complete the paper packet and return. There's several ways to return the paper packet, and I'll say that in a minute. And then once we get the paper packet in the mail, the eligibility workers will review the eligibility based on what's in the paper packet, and then a notice of action, either the person got extended for another 12 months or they're no longer eligible for Medicaid. They'll get that notice in the mail as well. Again, this is a 12-month process. We will do that over the 12 months period starting in March. So not everybody will get renewal packets at the same time. Okay. Next slide, please. Again, just want to highlight it's a 12-month process. We'll start the full renewals in March. The first closure will not occur until April 30th, and this process will continue on until next year. Next slide, please. I love looking at this slide. It just kind of highlights all the things we have done since mid-2020, since we knew this was eventually going to come and we'll have to go back to our normal processes. We have made several system changes, done many trainings, and we do a lot of stakeholder engagement and outreach work. So it's just kind of nice to have an overview of all the different things we have done to get here. I think at this point, I will pass it on to Katie.
All right, thank you. I am Katie O'Connell Raymond. I'm a Medicaid consultant with the Home Office of Virginia Department of Social Services. And so I'm going to go over some of the things that we have done in conjunction with DMAS to try to prepare for this massive undertaking we're getting ready to go on. As it's been stated, we're returning to our normal operations on April 1st, which is coming right up upon us. But to prepare for that, we've tried to communicate both internally and externally with everyone about what's getting ready to happen. So we've had joint messaging with DMAS and developed messages that are going out to local agencies and to the public, giving them information they need to know about all their effective programs, because it's not just Medicaid that is entering this phase. We're addressing that, but SNAP is also undergoing some changes as well. We've been having joint monthly unwinding statewide virtual meetings, and we've put together in conjunction with DMAS, there are lots of resources, FAQs, scripts, and unwinding toolkits that are available. And they really are important resources of different scenarios and questions that might come up. And I believe that's available on the Cover VA website. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But we are trying to prepare the local agencies by giving them unwinding guidance and advice, best case scenarios that they can work with. And the pretty important piece, I think, is the VDSS unwinding portal. And so that is available on our intranet to local agencies. And there's information there about what they can do to prepare. There are different slide decks and presentations that have gone on and been recorded, Q&As from joint monthly calls, and different guidance for the local agencies to prepare them for this task. Next slide, please. On the public side, we've been engaged in social media messaging on Facebook and Twitter. I've seen it myself, and those have been posted since November 22, informing the public about Virginia's plans for returning to normal. There's also a banner, the website that individuals can use to apply for almost every program has a banner with a public-facing message with important information about the PHE and the unwinding information, and that has been posted as well since November 22, and that gives you the address right there. On the public site for VDSS, there's messaging in place regarding the unwinding and resources, and it tells you where to go right there for dss.virginia.gov. And we've developed a press release that will be shortly available once it's approved. That is from DMAS and VDSS. And another good tool that I spent some time exploring the other day was information where we've partnered with the Virginia Association of Free and Charitable Clinics to prepare for people that are not going to remain approved. There are lots of people that their coverage has stayed open for the past 3 years that probably are no longer eligible. And this gives them some resources that they can reach out to, not just, a clinic, but pretty comprehensive care, including dental. So it's a good website to check out, the free clinicscare.org. Next slide, please. This is just a flyer that's been developed and for all the programs. Of course, I'm just focused on what's in orange on medical assistance. And that just states what steps have been taken during the past 3 years. And if you go to the very small blue banner on the bottom of that page, the dss.virginia.gov/benefit changes, you can find information there about this process. It's a very helpful tool. Next page, please. And just some general guidance because, behind the scenes, we've been working with DMAS and our local agencies trying to prepare them for different things. We have offered different instructor-led courses on benefit program policy. Currently, we're going through, I'm skipping down to the bottom, we're offering e-learnings for staff on going back to redeterminations. For 3 years, we haven't done renewals. And so this is for new and experienced staff. And then we're doing subject matter expert-led webinars where it's primarily the Medicaid consultants, regional and home office, answering questions for staff about renewals. And then the appeals staff is there to answer questions for them as well. And we're going to be posting FAQs and follow-up from those meetings. And we've been updating our internal pages on our intranet and just trying to make as many things available to local staff and our stakeholders to prepare them for this unwinding. It's been 3 years and I think we're all ready to dive in, and the state has done a lot to prepare for this. Next page, please. And at this point, I'm going to hand this back over to Natalie. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. All right, so you've heard about all the different ways in which our organizations are preparing for this massive transition that's going to be taking place. And we're excited, but we want to make sure you have the correct tools in which to do all of this work. And so if you go to the next slide, please. Thanks, Rebecca. You'll see we'll have our outreach, engagement, and communications plans are synced to 3 phases, definitely not 4. We do not need an additional one. The first one was update your contact information. We're perpetually in that state because it is important. We want to make sure that we're able to do phases 2 and 3. We want to be able to communicate and give the resource, the tools, the customer service necessary for our members to be successful. And in order to do that, they have to have updated contact information in our systems. And so we focused on that first. Then we're in phase 2. We started phase 2 last month about preparing our stakeholders and our members to actually complete the renewal process as paperwork becomes available, as instructions become available. to them and you. And then the last step is in our phase 3 is to really look at if you've lost coverage, what are the next steps? Do you need to be reconsidered? What are some additional components that need to take place? If you've had some really great life events take place, how can we make sure that you're successful in staying covered? So next slide. So let's look at what do those stakeholder groups look like. And for each one, everyone is different. We've been in phase 1 for a while, and every component, everybody that touches our members in the Virginia Medicaid ecosystem, I like to say, which includes not only VDSS and DMAS, but also includes our MCOs, our stakeholders such as yourself, our community outreach workers, everybody that is aiding our community members, include our community members themselves in being successful in this process. Once you get to that phase 3 area, we're going to have some more concentrated stakeholders that are going to help navigate our members through that process in a more structured manner, mainly because like this is their expertise, this is what they're doing. And we want to make sure that our health plans and our marketplace navigators have the opportunity to give the appropriate information. But again, I'm going to jump all the way back to phase 1. If we do not have appropriate updated contact information, we can't do any of these things. Jessica Anacini on our team often reminds us that we actually can't do phase 3 work if we don't have phase 1 done. And so we want to make sure that at every component that you're able to ask for updated contact information that you actually do so. And we have lots of resources, tools, and materials in order for you to do that in a myriad of different ways. Just in case they get annoyed by you asking a text, we have a way that you can send an email. If you need to stop sending an email and you need to, put it on social media, we have a way for you to do that as well. So let's kind of go through a couple of those resources so you'll know what they are. Next slide, please, Rebecca. Thanks. So when we're talking about communication and outreach updates, what have we done so far? When we're talking about the overall plan and all the different components of making sure that you're aware of what's happening, we have a digital ad campaign that our strategic communications, as well as those in the PR division of VDS is working on. We have social media campaign. We have a lot of the copy as well as the graphics. So you don't have to think of anything. Most of this is very plug and play for you. Cover Virginia website updates that have taken place. We're also making sure that where redirection needs to take place on the VDSS side, as well as our DMAS website, we do so back to Cover Virginia, just so that you as a stakeholder and our members can stay informed. We have toolkits that have been developed on both sides of our partners as well as our members. We've mailed out flyers and posters to our local Department of Social Services offices, as well as our community service board offices for phase 1, as we're preparing to make sure that all of those materials are in the warehouse for ordering for phase 2 and 3, that we will do the same, make sure they receive that packet to just get them jump started and make sure they're communicating where necessary. But you as a stakeholder can do the same. Once those materials are available in late March, early April, you'll be able to order those materials and then disseminate them to those that you directly touch yourself. Translated those documents, and I'll showcase the 6 translated languages. And on the next slide or two, you'll also see from provider standpoint, they have memos. We've informed our MCOs, we've working with them, make sure they have the correct language, that they have guidance, and they're clear about what they can do in order to support the process and support our members. We've held virtual meetings like these. We're holding different components, speaking at different associations, making sure that different organizations, businesses, anybody else that really needs this information, and we know that you're going to be touching our members, we want to make sure that you stay well informed. So we're holding all of these different town halls and different things in order to do that. I mentioned the town halls, and I also already mentioned the toolkits. So on the next slide, you'll see that when we talk about examples of what these things looks like, these are the toolkits, right? So you have the toolkit for our phase 1, and you have toolkit for phase 2 and 3. You can find them on the Cover Virginia website. We just did a quick update to our Cover Virginia website, and it looks beautiful. So if you have not, you can go to that website, and you'll find under the Return to Normal tab, that's in the top, I think, right-hand side. You click on that, and then you will see options to the last option is toolkits and materials. And once you click on that, you will see all of these toolkits, as well as the different individualized components of those toolkits available for downloading. And then once the phase 2 materials that are available for ordering are available, you'll see those on the materials page. Next slide, please. So an example of something else that we decided would be a great asset to you is, not everybody has gone through a renewal process. Not everybody has understood what that process looks like for them. When you've been in a holding pattern for 3 years, you may or may not be familiar with this process. And that goes for not just those who receive Medicaid, that also goes for some of our workforce as well. So for us, it's important that everybody is transparent and honest about what that process looks like to a certain degree, right? Medicaid is complex. on a myriad of different ways, but for us, understanding responsibility is truly important. So this particular flow chart allows for you to see what is the responsibility of Virginia Medicaid, what is the responsibility of the member, and then as we go through this flow chart, the member can tell, are we waiting on something from you? Or are you waiting on something from us? So we're trying our very best to make sure we communicate with you as well as our members about what this process can be expected in this process. But sometimes, things get lost in the sauce. And so we really are leaning on you heavily to make sure you're translating this process to your members effectively so they can go ahead and move through it successfully. Next slide, please. All right, so these are our flyers and our posters that will be available for ordering in the next couple of weeks for phase 2 and 3. They are front and back. They will also be translated in the other 6 languages that you see: Spanish, Arabic, Amharic, Urdu, Vietnamese, Dari, and Pashto. I will tell you that the English and Spanish versions will be available for ordering from our warehouse. You are more than welcome to download any of the other translated versions of the document. We've also made sure that those social media graphics and copy are also translated so that you can place those on social media if you need them as well in those various languages. Next slide, please, Rebecca. Thank you. So we're at these town halls. We've already completed 2. This is our 3rd. We have 4 more to go. We actually have one this evening for our advocates and community leaders. We'll send out some reminders about that. We just want to make sure that everybody is aware, everybody's understanding what the process is, what's going to take place, what role they play, how they can support, how we can support you. And we can't do that without some meaningful conversations and some opportunities for you to ask some questions. So we're doing that through these town hall settings. And then Katie is doing that, as you can see, through the workforce component of it, by having spaces in place for them to learn, grow, understand the process, but also to ask some questions. So if you're interested in joining any other town halls, please, by all means, we encourage you to scan this QR code and join us at any other time. And if you see that there's a gap, a stakeholder group that's just not represented and they just not really captured in any other one, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at Cover Virginia at dmas.virginia.gov, and we'll look at making sure that we're able to provide that where necessary. Next slide, please. So what are we asking you to do? What is the thing we're asking you to remember? Medicaid renewals begin this month. We are here. There's no more waiting. We are asking you to make sure our members will get those paper renewals packets in the mail. And when you talk about the Virginia Medicaid support, what we need for you to remind them that they need to update their contact information. And I know you're going to be like, how many times are going to say that? We're going to say that to the end of time. We'll say that as long as we need to in order to make sure that every eligible Virginian that needs to have their Medicaid renewal, they actually get to do so. And so we want to make sure that you know that your part, the most important part that you can actually play, is making sure that they update their contact information. Second, to you actually helping them renew their coverage through completing the packet that they receive. This is a 12-month process. 12 months meaning not everybody will be renewed at the same time, and that's a good thing, right? We have over 2 million people covered in the state of Virginia. Making sure everybody gets the customer service necessary in order to do this successfully is important to all of our agencies under the Medicaid, the Virginia Medicaid umbrella. And so making sure it's a staggered approach is important so that we get the service necessary to our members. But that also means that once they receive those packets, that they actually are encouraged to fill them out. So you play a tremendous part in making sure we're successful in getting that done. And then lastly, how can you support us is by making sure you give us the feedback necessary in order for you to be successful. At the end of the day, the most important component to all of this for all of us is to make sure that these members have the opportunity to renew their coverage if they're eligible. And if they're not, it's because they've had a wonderful life event, they got a promotion, they've moved up, they've changed jobs and are making money. Like all of these wonderful things that have happened over the last 3 years amongst the pandemic, we want to be able to celebrate, but also make sure that it's important they maintain coverage where necessary. So if we need to move them along to Virginia Poverty Law Center or Free Clinic Association or something else so they can maintain coverage or get coverage in another way, we want to be successful in doing that as well. So those are the main takeaways. Those are the things we really want you to remember as we're going through that component. So I'm going to turn this back over to Miriam.
Thank you. I believe there's one more slide. It's just kind of all the different ways we renew. I kept you on the I didn't tell you guys all the ways to renew earlier, but here they are. This is all the ways that we can apply for new application, do a new application or renew. You can call the Covered Virginia call center. You can go online to Common Health Portal. You can always go to your local Department of Social Service for in-person submission of the renewal forms. Again, just to, all the things that Natalie and Katie said, this is a 12-month process. This will take some time. If somebody's very, very eager to have their renewals done early, we can do that, but we ask them, we actually hope they can stay on Medicaid and until it's their turn to get renewed. At this time, we'll be happy to take questions. And Natalie's going to help us kind of facilitate that section. I did see somebody asking for the slides. We will post the slides and the recording on our coverage on our DMAS webpage. So all this information will be available for everybody.
Well, you already took care of the first one, Miriam, about the slides, because that's the first one they always ask. If you have someone that is currently homeless, right, and they have a history of homelessness, how can they make sure they're connecting with the appropriate resources like their local CSBs, so they can, process any paperwork that may be coming their way? How can they connect in order to make sure they're also receiving that paperwork? That is one of the questions that we received. And who would like to take that one? Oh, also before I begin, let me make sure we have the opportunity to have Cindy introduce herself. And if Aaron is here, introduce themselves, because they may be helping with questions today. Cindy, if you want to come off mute or show your beautiful face in order to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cindy Olson, and I am the Director of the Division of Eligibility and Enrollment Services here at DMAS.
Thanks, Cindy. And if you want to come off mute, introduce yourself. And I don't know if Aaron is here.
Hey folks, it's Ann Bevan. I am the director in the Division of High Need Supports, which has a whole variety of things in it.
This is true. All right. It doesn't look like Aaron is here, so we're going to keep
I'm
going.
here.
Who wants to take that? Oh, Aaron, you're here. Great.
I'm here. I'm having camera support. Can y'all see me? Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erin Wagner. I am the Social Determinants of Health Advisor at DMAS.
Thank you, Aaron. All right. So who would like to take the question about if you have a history of homelessness and you're having issues and you want to connect with either your local community service board or LDS, what would be the process to help in order to make sure you're getting the paperwork if you don't have a permanent address?
So this is Ann. Sure, I completely understand the question, but if someone is moving around and choosing to have some different addresses and see different parts of the city, as they mentioned, there may be a case manager that's involved. There's also, they're on Medicaid, so there's a high likelihood that they are part of an MCO or just regular state plan Medicaid. They can reach out to the helplines. They can make sure that their addresses are correct. They do that through DSS, so go to DSS, make sure your addresses are correct. They may be able to defer to DSS. DSS may be able to tell them whether something has been sent and so forth. If you are the provider or the support services that's helping this individual, whether it's a case manager or MCO or another provider of some sort, regularly engaging with the individual, asking them those questions and making sure that they know that this is coming. What is your right address? What is your right phone number? They may have a phone that's been distributed by the MCO that they can reach out and say, hey, it's another month, just checking to see if you've gotten any information. The person may ask for help and ask the provider support coordinator to hold their mail for them. But looking at a couple of different options, and they can help coordinate with DSS. There's a whole lot of folks out there that can help, but making sure that we have a good point of contact, whether that's a phone or a temporary address or something like that.
So I want to also clarify in the question, if they're experiencing homelessness and would like for one of those organizations or agencies to serve as their permanent address, is that also possible? And that may be a Katie question as well. if an LDS can serve as a permanent address for someone who is
Yeah,
experiencing.
not sure about
homelessness.
LDS. I know that individuals can and do sometimes choose for different providers to be there
Mhm.
to receive mail, or possibly a case manager. Again, that would have to be, I would think at a minimum for those agencies, would have to be an agreement between the individual and the
And
provider.
then, and is there a process in place in order for them to establish that? Or would that be on a case-by-case basis with those entities?
Right. I think it's probably case by case. I'll defer to DSS about how to make that happen, but I do know that it happens already.
Got it. So Katie, can you answer that question?
Having the local agency as a mailing address is an option. However, the individual needs to make sure that the local agency is receptive to that. They can only hold on to mail for, I think they hold on to it for about 3 months. But I would make sure that the agency will accept it beforehand. I just came back from a local agency and we always tried to make sure that maybe somebody had a PO box or another source for mail that could maybe take their mail before utilizing the agency. But that definitely is an option, but they should clarify that with their worker before they do that.
Okay, so it is an option. They just need to make sure that that is the understanding of both the agency and the member when it's
Right.
taking place. Okay, that's what okay, that's what I'm understanding. And you can go to the last slide, Rebecca. And if you have any additional questions, you can definitely send them to the Cover Virginia at dmas.virginia.gov email address at the bottom in order to clarify that even more if you need to. Will providers be notified when their individuals are scheduled for redeterminations? This is important, and having that notification date is truly important. That may be a Cindy question or a Miriam question. I will ask.
I'll just give a quick high level, and I would love for Cindy or Tia to help me out here. And I believe Tia has responded as well.
Oh, thanks, Tia.
Yeah, so this is really, really critical, guys, and I really appreciate this question because, as Tia has mentioned, providers should check every single time you have a patient come in to check their eligibility, regardless of unwinding or not unwinding or renewals or not. But now I know in the last couple of years, you knew everybody was on Medicaid. Maybe you relaxed that practice, but now it's time to go back to it because that will have a big impact if individual is no longer eligible or no longer on Medicaid. So please, please, please check the eligibility every time you see your patient. If somebody has a service authorization for another 12 months, does not matter if they're no longer eligible, they're no longer eligible. So highly recommend that. The other piece I wanted to mention was that I believe we are doing some system changes where the provider portal will have the renewal date available for providers to see as well. And this is where you can support the member by seeing if somebody's up for renewal if the patient comes in May and their renewal is in June, you remind them, or their renewal is in August, you say, hey, guess what? Your renewal date is coming up. Make sure if you get a paper packet, make sure you fill it out. So we appreciate that as well. I'm going to pause here and see if Cindy and Ann, anybody else wants to add in.
Miriam, I think you've covered it.
Well, thank you both. And Tia, I did not see you come in. Did you want to come on camera right quick and introduce yourself? Just so we'll be able to see your face.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tia Lewis, and I'm the division director for program.
Oh, 1 second. I'm sorry. Let me get this person muted. Oh, good. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Tia.
That's okay. Good afternoon. I'm Tia Lewis, and I'm the program operations director for DMAS. And Miriam is absolutely correct. It's going to be important that providers check eligibility every time. And we understand that, like Miriam stated, we've been kind of plugging along and coverage has kind of remained the same. But it's going to be critical at this point to check each and every time the member comes in, because unfortunately, we all know when we just talked about notices, it's a possibility that the member is not even aware of the change that's been made in their coverage. So you as the provider, I hate to put additional We're working with you, and Miriam stated there's a system change coming, so you can view it, and that's correct. And I did put our automated system phone number in the chat. For me, I feel like that's the easiest way because you can kind of enter the things and walk around and listen to the eligibility. But you can also check on whichever plans you're associated with website, as well as check on the DMAS web portal if you want to view eligibility for members. Thank you.
Thank you, Tia. Actually, I may have a follow-up for you. Don't go too far. What's the best way to check Medicaid eligibility if you're doing that?
I like the Medi-Call, which is the 800-884-9730 I put in the chat. But any of the ways, because I'm being told there's numerous ways you can check, either online, you can use Medi-Call, but all of them work. Don't be concerned if you're checking through one of our partners at the plans because they have access to the exact same information. So if you are currently credentialed and do business with United Healthcare, Anthem, or one of our other plans, then the same information that you utilize to view eligibility in their portal is the same information that DMAS has. So whichever way is more comfortable for your billing office, because we understand that this, adds a task that you need to check off. But I just think the 800 number and the phone number is the easiest.
Sounds good. Thank you. I would also, another question that came up is regarding what's the best way to prepare LTSS recipients for this change? And I don't quite know who would be the best subject matter expert to answer that.
I'll step in on that because that's one of my favorite topics.
Okay.
I think with that population, generally there are lots of power of attorneys and authorized representatives. And I think you need to make sure you're sharing this messaging with them as well. Tell them that the state is resuming normal operations, redeterminations are going to occur. If you have that opportunity where you can find out when the renewal is going to take place that they mentioned, they're trying to make it visible, let them know. And part of the problem we've had in the past is a lot of times renewals go just to the facility and the individual really isn't capable of filling out the form. And then the facility tries to, but they're not authorized to, if that makes sense. So we need to make somebody that has the capability to be an authorized representative, be the one that fills out the redetermination form if that's the case. If the customer can't complete it, make sure you've got someone that is legally able to sign for them. And then if there are required verifications that they can get it. Too many cases close when they go to the facility and they just sit. And so that is always a concern.
Thank you. And a follow-up question that came to that, it says we're implementing a special exclusion period for customers enrolled in LTSS that will be addressed at their renewal. What are the additional resources that are being provided for this group, if there are any?
This exclusion that I think I mentioned it in the chat, this is only going to apply to individuals that are currently enrolled in LTSS services at the time of their redetermination. And what it does, any excess liquid resources that they've accumulated during the past 3 years, they will have from the time of their redetermination until the next time to dispose of it. And we'll get more guidance on that out. But the worker will inform the individual that we're excluding these resources and that they will be addressed at their next redetermination. And that's only for the people that are enrolled in long-term care. That we will exclude liquid resources over 2,000.
Okay, I think you answered this one about resource limitation and excess resources caused by patient liability reductions and freezings. I think you just addressed that. So we'll take care of that one. Thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah, but
Oh, go ahead.
I know that may be the case with DMAS, DSS, and Medicaid eligibility, but know that that could still, and I'm not an expert, could still have implications for people's Social Security because this doesn't have anything to do with some of their Social Security rules. So two different pots. We're only speaking to the Medicaid eligibility component.
Well, let's switch over for a second. Like when we're talking about the renewal qualifications and all of that, how does that apply to those who are incarcerated? And then also, what does that transition look like if they're transitioned out of incarceration?
Oh, Natalie, let me see if I can answer this one.
Okay, thanks, Sandy.
The eligibility requirements are not changing. So if the individual was eligible and nothing has changed in their situation, they're still incarcerated, chances are they're probably going to remain eligible unless something in their situation has changed. So the eligibility requirements remain the same. What is happening is that we haven't conducted annual redeterminations of eligibility to ensure that continued coverage for 3 years now. So all offenders will need to have their eligibility renewed as well. And as long as they continue to meet the original eligibility requirements, then they will be, they will have Medicaid continue. Now, if they've transitioned out of the correctional facility, the individuals at our Cover Virginia Incarcerated Unit will be doing reviews to look at them and put them in ongoing eligibility coverage for their time once they get out of the correctional facility.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Will the housing services that are, and I don't know completely if I got this correct, will the housing services that are covered by Medicaid continue to be covered by them, or is that a new service? I'm not quite understanding this statement question.
I can take a stab at that one, Ann, for you. So,
Thanks, Erin.
yeah, no problem. So today, DMAS, the only housing services that they cover is for individuals that have a DD waiver. And so, so that's the only, and you want to take over?
Right.
But
There's a small service that's available in DD waiver for people that qualify, called Community Guide. It doesn't necessarily do housing, but it can help people connect resources and learn to use community resources.
Yes. So today, that's the only support, the population that has supports, some type of housing supports available to them. So that
sounds good. And where can they go to learn more information about that particular waiver or services that are provided for housing under that waiver?
The individual will know whether they're on the DD waiver. And if they are, then they have the array of services available to them and should be working with their support coordinator. It won't be the care coordinator with an MCO. This is carved out of MCO. So it's a support coordinator at a CSB. They must have one in order to be on the DD waivers, and they will absolutely know who that person is. If they feel like they need that service or any other service that's available in DD waiver, they just have to work with their support coordinator to determine if they are eligible for the service itself.
And I can add that the MCOs, all the 6 MCOs do have somebody that is appointed internally that provides supports, helps the member with resources and things that are available to them, helps them with applications at all of the MCOs. They call them different things. Some of them call them like a housing coordinator, but they do. All 6 MCOs have someone that if an individual is having a housing need or a barrier, they can contact the MCO and let their care coordinator know or someone else internally know that they're having a housing barrier, and they can give them information to help find them supports that are available to them in the community or help them with the application and many different array of things. So definitely if the individual has Medicaid, contact the MCO, let them know the housing barrier, and they can provide assistance to them.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. And those who were in the space that are supporting those that are incarcerated, where can they go to find additional resources or information about that?
About what?
So,
Oh, sorry.
are you talking about applying for Medicaid or receiving
Yes,
services?
Cindy,
So,
for those
so
who are incarcerated or transitioning out of incarceration.
So individuals who are incarcerated in Department of Corrections facilities, CMS receives an electronic file on I don't know whether it's a daily or weekly basis of all of the new admissions and the discharges that are coming up, so that our staff at Cover Virginia can process either new applications or work to transition those individuals out of incarcerated coverage and into coverage for being back in the community. The process has been set up for a long time, but if there is someone who was not able to go or didn't show up on that electronic file, contact can be made with Cover Virginia. And if you get to the Cover Virginia number, you can, I don't have the Cover Virginia incarcerated unit number right off the top of my head, but if you call Cover Virginia, you could get to a customer service rep who could transfer you over to the incarcerated unit, and you could speak to someone there. We also have a way to receive information from the local and regional jails about individuals who are incarcerated there. And for those people who are incarcerated in a local or regional jail, we do the same process as we do for individuals incarcerated in Department of Corrections facilities to get them enrolled in incarcerated Medicaid or reviewed and moved out of incarcerated Medicaid into coverage for them being back in the community.
Thank you, Cindy. One of the things was trying to access some of the resources, the toolkits and materials on the Cover Virginia website. As mentioned, we went through a refresh this weekend. And so if you've had the old URL, it may not, it's supposed to redirect you, but I dropped the updated Cover Virginia URL in the chat. So please grab that and let me know if you're able to access those materials as needed. You'll see the return to normal in the top right hand corner, and you can click on that and follow the same processes that was mentioned before. The next one, and I think this will be a Katie one since she loves LTSS so much. It says, will clients on LTC, Medicaid, or with LTSS be evaluated for any asset transfers during the unwinding in the last 3 years, or only on their current eligibility status or current resources?
I'm going to say that's one of the questions that we're trying to get resolved by DMAS. We always do look at asset transfers if they've occurred. You can't just give your money away. So for LTSS people, you know, they're getting that 1 year exclusion, but just because you're having an exclusion of the excess doesn't mean that you can just give it to your daughter. So we're going to try to get some background to that beforehand. But, you know, I would imagine that the majority of the asset penalty or asset transfer policy still applies. So we'll come up with more guidance on that shortly.
Thank you so much, Katie. We have a question about housing program resources that are available. As we do the resources, do some research in order to make sure we're filling out the FAQ document that will come out as a result of all of these town halls. We'll make sure that we reach out to those appropriate stakeholders in order to get a couple of those resources for you. I don't want to misspeak. Will any of our subject matter experts know any off top of the hand outside of like Homeward or something like that? We'll definitely place some of those things in our FAQ, but I don't want to say that we know an exhausted list of homelessness programs that exist across the Commonwealth today, right here. Okay, well, I guess that'll be the answer to that question. And so we have a couple of questions regarding allowable assets and needs, and I think we've talked about those. I don't see any other ones that are outstanding. I do want to give an opportunity for each one of our SMEs to kind of let us know, since we don't have any immediate questions that are in the chat or Q&A. Seems like we answered those that were sitting ahead of time. Lay, look at us. I'm going to go around to each one and see if there's anything, there's any parting words or final things that we need to keep in mind regarding this process that we haven't mentioned already. So I'll go down the list. Cindy, is there anything that you want to have anybody remember or make sure they keep in mind as they're going through this process?
I think the most important thing that I could say is if you're working with a Medicaid member, please, please, please make sure that their address is correct with their local Department of Social Services. Us not having a good address could mean that an individual's renewal packet won't get there. It'll come back as returned mail. If we can't find a new address, that could, for that person, it could mean that their coverage would be canceled. And that's the last thing that we want to have happen as we move through the next 12 to 14 months. We don't want anybody to lose their coverage if they can remain eligible. So please, please remind people to keep their addresses updated.
Thank you, Cindy. Anything from you, Tia?
Parting words are simply to make sure you check eligibility, not only for yourself, but for the member. And if you do run into a situation where the member's eligibility has changed, then it's okay to refer that member to the resources available to them. If they have a reduction in coverage, it will still allow them to call our member helpline. If they have changed plans or things of that nature, we're trying to assist you with not taking on any difficulty with the member, because we understand that this puts the provider who deals face-to-face with the member in an awkward position. So feel free to refer the members to their resources, but just to ensure that you are checking eligibility every single time, just to make sure that you have the appropriate information on how to bill. That's it.
As always, thank you, Tia. Any parting words from you, Erin?
Hi. My parting words is just the importance for everybody to make sure they have, that address and phone number so that someone at the MCO can, like a care coordinator, can contact them and be able to, support them any way possible. And last but not least, please remember that the MCOs have internal support staff that can help individuals that have a housing barrier. It's not just housing, it's housing, food, and employment. So please utilize them and contact them because they are there to help you, help the member. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. And we got a couple of questions in some of these parting words about the best way for an individual to update their contact information. And Miriam went through the ways to renew, but you can use the same pathways to renew your update your contact information. You can go through Cover Virginia. You can also go through Common Help. I always say, which way do you want to do it? Do you want to make sure you're in control of it or somebody else is in control of it? If you want to make sure somebody else is in control of it, then you contact Cover Virginia. If you want to be in control of it, you can go on Common Help and do it yourself and make sure somebody updates that. And if you want to, outsource that control again, you can also stop by the local Department of Social Services. Katie may give you another pathway or two, but those are the main pathways for updating your contact or making sure a member updates their contact information. Anne, do you have any parting words?
Oh, good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Katie, do you have anything you want to reinforce?
The biggest thing I want to reinforce that I always say that I'm still guilty of, make sure you tell anybody that you deal with to check their mail. This piggybacks on what Cindy was mentioning, making sure their address is correct. It may be correct, but make sure they're looking at their mail. I'm very guilty of getting mail and just setting it to the side, but if they see anything from their local agency or Cover Virginia or DMAS, open it. If they've returned their redetermination, if we've had to send out a paper packet, they may need additional verifications. And so the agency or Cover Virginia would send them a checklist of information that they need to return for their eligibility to be redetermined. So make sure they're looking at their mail, looking at the dates that things have to be returned. And just to address, if a case does get closed, then whether they didn't return their renewal or they didn't return a required verification, there is a 90-day grace period where that information still can be returned and coverage will go back to the date it was closed. So there's no lapse in coverage. There may be a slight lapse in the MCO, which occurs when we close and then reopen. but make sure they're just looking at their mail. That's my biggest thing, I have to say.
And I'll have a follow-up, as they're trying to sneak some extra questions in here at the end. For those who are having hard times hard or difficult times connecting with people at the local Department of Social Services, what words of advice or guidance would you give them?
If they're having a hard time getting anybody at the local agency, I would reiterate, try Cover Virginia. And then what Cover Virginia does is sometimes they will send communications to the local agency. But if you're contacting the local agency and you can't get in touch with someone, then no one's going to give anyone information if they're not an authorized rep or entitled to speak to them. So make sure you've got the right person calling. That's often a problem. But when you're encountering that problem, it doesn't hurt to ask for that person's supervisor to make sure that message gets across, and just escalate it if you cannot get anyone. But you have to have someone that is either the individual or an authorized rep to speak to them. Because I often, at the local agency, I would get social workers just calling me, and I can't, because of HIPAA, give you any information. So make
Thanks,
sure you've got
Katie.
someone calling that has authorization.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Katie. I think there's, there are some experiences where nobody just picks up. So I know that's also a concern, and we have heard that, and we understand that. And that's why, Allie, I believe is her name, we have two different ways for Medicaid members to submit their updated contact information. Cover Virginia Call Center, if they want to, use the call centers to do that. I don't know if you have the right information here, but health plans are able to support that. It has to be a direct member contacting their health plan call center to send the updated or provide the updated contact information. Health plans are actually sending us weekly data for folks who provide their updated contact information to us, and then we update our systems based on the new address or phone number. So those are the two ways through call centers, and then of course the Common Help portal is also available to do those changes, I believe. So that's really important for all of us to make sure that we have updated contact information before the renewals go out.
Thank you, Miriam. And probably that will probably have been her parting words anyway, to make sure you do updated contact information. So we want to thank each of you first and foremost for being here today. It's a lot of work. As you can see, we have our subject matter experts here and ready to answer all questions. Make sure you feel empowered, that you feel encouraged to do the work that you know is necessary. We always want to thank you for that, because we understand sometimes it's a bit of a thankless job, but it's a necessary one. Our agency director, Director Roberts, often reminds us at the end of the day, the most important factor in all of this is our members, and making sure our members have the best possible experience, customer service experience, but quality health insurance at the end of the day. And any way we can do or equip you or provide you with the resource you need in order to have a pathway to that, we will do. So we thank you for joining us today. We thank you for sharing this information. We thank you for the work you will do with our community members. And every now and then, I hope that you thank each other for that kind of work, because sometimes it can be quite challenging. So as Miriam said at the beginning, we're going to be posting this on the website. You will have access to the slides. If you have any additional questions, you have the email at the bottom. At the end of the day, the last thing you can't do is come home with us. And so we're hoping that you get all the information that you need in order to get in contact with us. We thank all of our SMEs. We thank Miriam. We thank Katie for joining us today, for everyone that's working in the background to make sure they're successful as well. You have a lovely day. We hope that you enjoyed your lunch while you joined us today. And we hope that you join us again at another time. Y'all have a lovely one. Bye.